All right, folks, we are going to get started. Panelists, I see many shiny faces on webcam today. We look like we're ready to go. We have a number of attendees continuing to come in, but I also want to be respectful of time, and thank you for those of you who've blocked out an hour today to join us for this virtual roundtable. My name is Spencer Giese. I'm a research and education specialist at ACUHO, and we are in week 9 of our virtual roundtable series. Today, we are going to be talking about navigating Moveouts, crafting that positive end of the student experience, and also we'll be taking some of those lessons learned from Moveout and seeing how we can connect those to a potential future move-in process. And today's virtual roundtable is in partnership with Dorm Room Movers. Let's get started. As you see on your Zoom cameras, you have, I'm sure many of you have had so much fun experience with Zoom lately. You have the ability to create tiles, rows, grids. So if you want to get a high number of our panelist videos on your display, just take a look at those different display options that Zoom provides. Thank you again to Dorm Room Movers for being our partner this week on our virtual roundtable series. We had 3 virtual roundtables this week that we partnered together to put on. So thank you again to Dorm Room Movers. I'd be remiss if I didn't briefly share, again, pointing folks at our numerous online resources that ACUHO has been putting together for the field. So please take a look at that, whether it's virtual roundtable recordings, threads in our online community, or COVID-19 specific resources that we put together. This is really the embodiment of your membership dollars coming together to help us be able to provide you resources. So thank you for being a part of this professional community and your support as being a member of ACUHO. I'll briefly touch on a few of our guests that you're seeing on webcam today. We've got Matthew Grossman, the co-founder of Dorm Room Movers. So thank you, Matthew, for being a part of our session today. And we have a number of practitioners that are joining us from Residence Life, and you'll be getting to hear some of their experiences shortly. So look forward to getting to chat with you all today. Again, as I like to share in our virtual roundtables, this session is really successful by your participation. So today, you should see a Q&A tab. That is really your ability to be a part of the conversation, help drive what we discuss. If you have questions about the move out process that come up on any of the slides that are coming up, please bring those up, put those in the Q&A. As you do that, introduce yourself to the group. Our question answer function is visible to everyone who's attending today. So you may be able to have another colleague who's also on the session as an attendee be able to chime in and share their experiences. You also have the ability to upvote questions. So if you see a great question coming, you're like, yes, let's make sure we bring that up. Please upvote that. That'll really help us identify some of those key questions that the audience wants answered. Also, let's take a look at our raised hand function, making sure that you are seeing a slide deck presentation. You're seeing some videos coming through. If you could just hit the raise hand function, let me know that we are loud and clear on Zoom today. And shows me that we have an active audience. So thank you for being an active audience. And I'm so glad that our tech skills are working yet again today. Thank you. So I'm going to lower those hands. I do like to check on those hands. If you've got a raised hand, that tells me that maybe you want to speak. So you might get called upon during the session. So be aware, please don't accidentally hit the raised hand function or you might get called on. It's super fun. Let's move forward with our session, and really the piece of data that helped to drive this session being created. As we think about the why we put together these virtual roundtables, this really came about from our latest straw poll. We had a question 6 on our latest straw poll really talked a lot about that personal property from students and what was the situation that was happening on campuses that answered our straw poll. And we've got a couple of slides coming up that have great information. We'll show them briefly. We are also recording this session. We will send this recording out to our attendees. And if you'd like to screenshot some of this data coming up, feel free to if that is helpful for you on your campus. So in terms of results, if you take a look at our screen currently, when we are looking at the terms of closing those residential spaces in our latest straw poll, we had a variety of answers, and we saw a mass majority of respondents saying that some of our spaces are still occupied by students. and occupied with belongings, occupied with items that at some point we need to get off our campuses as we move forward. So some pretty strong data there. And then also when we're taking a look at that personal property that was still on the campuses, you know, how were campuses addressing that? Were they allowing students to pick that up, or were campuses finding ways to move those belongings back to the students? So take a look at that data for a moment. And this really, again, our straw polls are helping to drive what we do as a field and data that we're able to collect on the ACUHO end. So thank you to all of you who've been able to be participants in that, and senior housing officers for such quick response to that as we send those out. Thank you. Now, I'm going to pass it over to Matt to work with our panel today and have a great session.
Well, thank you, Spencer, and thank you to our incredible panel, to all of you for taking the time to join the conversation today. I'm super excited to be here myself. I know these past months have been really difficult for so many, and you know, even with all the unknown and unprecedented activities that we've been thrusted into, it's been really inspiring to see our ACUHO community really band together through the thick of it, and you know, sharing it and guiding each other through these challenges. So it's really with that passion and belief that the only true source of knowledge is experience that we've brought this together today, and we find ourselves fortunate enough to be able to share in these journeys, you know, as a community. So with that, I'd love to introduce our panel and give the opportunity, if we want to do a quick introduction and maybe a communication starter of, you know, what's been the biggest topic of conversation on your campus this week. So Jeff, you want to take it off?
Sure, Matt, thank you. And thanks for this opportunity, and thank ACUHO for all of the sharing that has occurred over the last month and a half. At Montana State University, I guess the last week, we closed the semester last Saturday, and we moved out our final 200 students. We're housing about 20 on campus for the summer. We did allow 200 to stay that had nowhere else to go this spring. The topic today at about 9:30, an email went out. We received direction from the university and notification that we would actually begin this semester 2 weeks early, with the plan of concluding fall semester by Thanksgiving. And so just as we were closing spring semester, talking about storage and retrieval of items, our window of opportunity narrowed a bit. And so we're just reacting and starting to put together a new plan.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for making time. Amanda?
Sure, thanks, Matt. I'll echo Jeff's sentiments about ACUHO being such a great resource to all of us in this time. The data and the information and the conversations we've been able to have with our colleagues has been really helpful over the last few weeks. So I'm at Union College in Schenectady, New York. We're a small private liberal arts college. We have about 2,000 students who live on campus. We closed down, and we have about 56 remaining right now. We're a trimester school, so we're still finishing up our spring trimester. We're in, I believe, week 8 of 10 right now. So the conversation this week has really just been about how those students are doing and our preparations for fall and what fall might look like.
Great, thank you for joining, Amanda. We're excited to hear about everything that's been going on. Also with us today, John White. John, you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you. And again, I would like to thank ACUHO for all that they've done and all the resources they've provided. We closed about a week ago as well, and we had around 400 that lived with us during the remainder of the spring semester, and we had those move out last week, and we have about 200 that will stay with us for summer. We are in the process. We had a little over 700 students that left their belongings, and we're in the process of working with them to pick up their belongings, as well as have dorm room movers or another vendor come pack up their belongings and move those out. We're in the process of trying to work with health officials of how our occupancy will look like for the fall, whether we go with single occupancy or some type of very reduced occupancy of the fall. They're also thinking of 2 weeks late starting, which means that we could actually have finals in January for the fall, and then everything backs up for the semester after that. We are in Cleveland. We are a private school as well. So we are trying to adjust to everything. So that's what we're kind of dealing with right now.
Thank you, John. And it's really awesome to have so many panelists from different regions of the country here with us. That was part of our intention to try and, really hit all the different areas from epicenters to rural. So thank you, John. And speaking of epicenter, Drue, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Drue Zimmerman. I work with housing and food services at the University of Washington. Similar to a lot of other folks, we are still kind of thinking about move-in coming up already, which seems crazy to be thinking about at this point in time. But the University of Washington is a quarter school, so our traditional move-out would not have taken place until June 13th. We still have approximately 1,500 students living with us this quarter. So we will have a move-out process in June for those remaining students, in addition to the process that we've been coordinating over the past several weeks and now into months. So that has definitely been on the radar this week. In addition, just some excitement, I guess, that there's some normalcy maybe coming someday, although I don't know when that will be at this point. But we have a few construction projects taking place on campus, and the Washington State Return to Work protocol allowed those projects to get started and continue. So a few of those are in residence, including a new residence hall we're opening in the fall, and also a renovation project that we're working on. So on the facility side, it's exciting to kind of see some normal summer activity while we're still navigating all of this from COVID.
Thank you, Drue. It's wild to see all the projects that we have concurrently spinning, when everything comes to a halt for a week. It's like, whoa, getting them all restarted. So I'm sure there's many folks that can appreciate that share. Here from Manhattan School of Music, Samantha.
Hi everyone, my name is Samantha Timshin. I'm the Director of Residence Life here at Manhattan School of Music. We're nestled in the Upper West Side, Morningside Heights neighborhood of New York City, and we have about 1,000 students, about 500 on campus, so or more, a little bit more than that. We're transitioning into summer, exciting, very exciting moment. We had our commencement toast this morning, and we are transitioning about half of our students off campus while another half still stay on campus for the summer. And of course, on our minds is occupancy and our start dates.
Thank you so much. And then our last panelist, Dave Sunby from Chapman. How you doing, Dave?
Good. Thanks, Matt, and thanks to ACUHO. As all the other presenters said, I kind of feel like we're at the Academy Awards here thanking the Academy, but I do really appreciate the conversation with all my colleagues over the last couple of months. I can't imagine getting through this stretch without all the amazing knowledge sharing that I've seen with our community. As Matt said, I'm the Director of Residence Life and First Year Experience at Chapman University in Orange, California. So we're in Orange County. We typically house about 3,500 students. We're down to less than 200 now. Our total campus population is about 7,200, and we're a private school. We are currently focused on fall, but we also are trying to wrap up the loose threads because our semester ends next week. Finals are next week. We're on semesters. So our president also announced last week 14 task forces to help get ready to reopen and what will fall look like as we plan, hopefully, for in-person instruction and activities in the fall. So that has consumed a lot of time as I was put in charge of one of those task forces to prepare for fall, specifically around our residence halls.
Thanks, Dave. And again, thank you everyone for joining. Our panel's taken a lot of time and effort putting their thoughts for their experience shared together. And I encourage, while you're hearing them, to just kind of look for areas where you can identify, whether it's in campus size, state, public, scenario or timeline. There's so many shared experiences here and unique ones that may not have been faced yet. So with that, we'd love to get started here with Drue will be our first panelist, speaking about safety and access coordination with active COVID cases on campus. So Matt, take it away, Drue.
Thanks, Matt. So the University of Washington was in the middle of an early epicenter as this started taking off nationwide and the responses started taking off. We first began working and planning around COVID-19 response in late January, when we had 2 students return to residence that had recently been in the Wuhan area in China, and they were symptomatic at the time. That triggered within housing our development and start of our emergency response team to start putting protocols and plans in place. Those students thankfully tested negative, which put a pause on kind of our initial planning and thoughts around this. But in a large part, that was extremely helpful for us as a management team to start getting our heads wrapped around what our reality was going to be. Of course, February proved to be somewhat quiet across the nation when it came to this. It just kind of felt like it was a matter of time before something was going to happen, though. And so our teams, in consultation with environmental health and safety, began putting our isolation housing protocol and some pieces like that in place, which which was a huge help for us to move quickly in March when a lot of big things happened on this timeline that's posted. As I had mentioned earlier, we're a quarter school, and in early March, our president announced that we were going to move online on March 6th for the remainder of winter quarter. With that in mind, we saw really a huge mass exodus from campus at that point in time, but they weren't taking their stuff with them. They were planning to come back in 3 or 4 weeks. We were all kind of a wait and see kind of mentality at that point in time. And in retrospect, it would have been nice to had the opportunity to plan a little bit more, but those students left, and most of them never came back. A lot of them out of state international students, and it prompted our need to really start thinking creatively and critically about how we were going to manage, at that point in time, about 7,500 people's items that were off campus and not able to return right away. The Washington Stay Home, Stay Healthy order was put into place as well, which had a huge impact on parents' feelings of safety around coming back to campus and retrieving belongings. And that's what really prompted my initial phone call to Matt, who we've partnered with for a number of years at UW, to say, hey, we have a problem here. I have a lot of student stuff on campus, and we need to, figure out a way to get them their stuff back. One thing that I knew we couldn't do was, a lot of our staff had moved to working remotely. We did not want to take on the liability of having them go into the rooms and pack items. We didn't have the we didn't have enough staffing to do that even if we wanted to, but it also was a safety concern because we did have active cases by this point in time on campus. We had confirmed in residence positive test results. We had staff and faculty on campus with confirmed positive test results by this point in time. So there was a lot of anxiety among staff at that point in time. Another piece that was important to us was, we'd already seen that this was going to have a huge financial impact on our department and our university as a whole. So we were not in a position of paying for this for students. We were in a position of being flexible with our housing agreements and allowing students out of that. And the university does have a pretty robust emergency fund for students to apply that are in need. And when students would ask us about that, we referred them to that fund. So we started working with Matt and developed this Zoom packing program that he's implemented at some other campuses now as well. That has gone extremely well for us as a whole, and we've been really pleased as the feedback has come in. But we were needing to intake that information because we wanted to keep Matt's staff safe. So we didn't want our staff to go in and pack for safety reasons. We also wanted to make sure that his staff was safe. So part of our process, we developed a database that would track students that are in isolation, whether self-selecting isolation, students that had presumed positive test results or waiting test results. And I was, along with a colleague, keeping that information, reviewing it along with the students that had requested packing or moving services or a proxy. We did allow proxies to come in, whether that be friends, family, or another moving company. And then releasing keys to those rooms for these individuals, assuming that they are not on the list of there's been a sick case, the appropriate amount of time has shifted, allowing us to enter. So we did a lot of this in consultation, all of this in consultation with the King County Public Health Department and our environmental health and safety team on campus. As everyone knows, there's a lot of conflicting information out there. So we were navigating pieces from the CDC, King County Public Health, Seattle Public Health, and the state guidelines, federal guidelines. Everything was kind of a little different. And so we really relied heavily on our campus environmental health and safety team to give us that information and be consistent. So
That's
campus
awesome.
partners were important.
And it's indicative that your process was a working one when you end up in a space today where you have 19 out of 9,600 students where technically they're unaccounted for, right? Like, are they moved out? Do they need to have their belongings moved out? So that's an incredible journey that you've been on. So thank you for sharing, Drue. And if anyone has any more questions for Drue, I'm sure he'd be happy to help lend some of his expertise as it applies to your campus. So moving us in to our next topic here, Dave Sunby from Chapman, gonna give us his magic juice on expediting move out and how to navigate third-party access liability. Go ahead.
I don't know what magic juice is, Matt, but
when you get 80% of your campus moved out in 48 hours, there's something happening there.
All right. Well, we weren't quite 40 hours, but it happened pretty quickly for us. I think some of the challenges we faced are going to be similar to what all of you have faced. I think one of the biggest things was the rate of change. When we announced that we were going virtual, it came out on a Wednesday morning that we were going to go virtual the next day. On Tuesday, I had gotten information from our senior leadership. We were going to wait until after spring break on March 30th. And in the intervening 12 hours, that information changed. So we didn't have a lot of time to prepare for what our messaging would look like. And that continued to change. We were watching things like UW and what was happening up in the Northwest. We were watching what was happening in Massachusetts and New York and trying to predict that because Orange County hadn't had a lot of active cases. We weren't in an outbreak epicenter. But as soon as things moved, because a lot of our students are national or international, they wanted to know how they could leave. We also didn't announce that we were closing for the entire semester. We announced that we would move online for the foreseeable future. And that led to one of our other challenges, which how to message to students the importance of moving out if possible, but that we weren't closed. Our leadership really wanted to make that clear. We weren't closing, but that we still wanted students to leave. So in each phase of messaging, as the situation changed for us in the state and locally, we had to sort of tighten up that messaging. We never officially sent anything saying we're closed and that we're closing for the spring. We got to the point where you'll see on our timeline on the 23rd. At that point, by the time we hit that, we had already articulated on the 23rd to people that you should, if you can go home, you should go home, and you need approval to stay, which is essentially closing, but they wanted us to avoid that language. The other thing was balancing competing community safety and security concerns. As Drue said, we were worried about people bringing cases in or being exposed, that we had no active cases or confirmed cases on campus. But we also wanted people to leave, and we wanted that to happen, especially in that first week before we had a statewide shelter in place, stay-at-home order. We knew the Bay Area was already, I think 6 counties were in a shelter-in-place situation, and we anticipated it was coming. So we wanted people to leave, so we set up a proxy situation in a matter of 24 hours that we had approval from legal. But we still wanted to figure out how to keep our community safe because we still had hundreds of students in there and we didn't want random people in and out. That was a piece we had a lot of conversation about, how to balance, you know, our instinct as residence life professionals to keep people out who don't live there unless they're an approved guest, while also allowing flexibility in the situation given the local and national circumstances. So that was, we gave a lot more flexibility than I ever thought I would around the safety of our buildings, but I think it was crucial for us getting to around 80% fully moved and checked out. We also set up a completely remote, non-in-person checkout process where students could fill out a form. And we did, by the end of the business on the 13th, we had signage around buildings and forms out at every hall office or apartment office that could do that. The other piece of liability mitigation is once we started to talk with dorm room movers and other companies about a pack and ship or pack and store option. We had an issue last year in a building that was related to facilities and water, and we had a company come in and pack students' items up and store them for a bit because it was during a break, and it was a nightmare. We had a lot of liability issues and student claims that they had things in rooms that were lost, and we really wanted to figure out how to mitigate that. And our risk management department was very hesitant to get into a situation where students wouldn't be handing off their items directly to a company like Dorm Room Movers. Some of the language I think that we sorted out with Matt in that process and with our legal team was helpful. Matt, you can confirm, but I think you've lifted some of that language for future agreements to sort of make sure that the university wasn't liable and that students understood what they were signing up for when they signed up for these Zoom calls for pack and ship or store option. So in the matter of less than a month, we were at a point where we had our plan for items left behind, and we're working towards that, and numbers are decreasing daily. I know we're below 200 now student belongings in campus. That's just in the last day we've had 10 or 12 people come move out. I think one of the biggest impacts for us was I try to lead a very flat department and distribute a lot of work in a way that we can work nimbly across sort of titles and across that structure for our team. And it really served us well in this process because things move so quickly. We had to pivot each day, and people who weren't normally negotiating contracts with legal were doing that. They were involved in those conversations, and everyone kind of had to pick up whatever needed to be done on each day. And we had to provide flexibility for team members who just were overwhelmed and needed to take a morning off because things happened so quickly and there was so much stress and anxiety happening that we had to really find a way to coordinate and distribute that work. The other thing is that we worked so quickly that we were at a point where campus leadership was looking to us for messaging, and that allowed us to be out front with the campus. And once we had that trust, then we had more leeway to really go in a programmatic direction we wanted to. We're not an auxiliary, so we don't have that same funding independence, but obviously the decisions we were making had financial impacts. And so leadership really trusted us once we were able to show how quickly we could move, that they could trust us the rest of the way out. And it's allowed us, I think, to really make some decisions that are in the best interest of students throughout the process.
It's awesome. Thank you, Dave. And yes, admittedly, I have repurposed that terrific document. So thank you for helping with getting us to build a better mousetrap. We're always looking to. So next up here, we have Samantha speaking on refunds and incentives for students to take fast action. Certainly a topic that can help everyone. You take it away, Samantha.
All right. Hi, everyone. I feel like this is group therapy because Drue and Dave spoke a lot to a similar experience that we had. And it's so good to know that we weren't the only ones to have a bumpy ride, especially with such a turbulent startup with the numbers kind of starting slow and then exploding. So the thing I really want to hone in on is how we did an incentivized move out. Something that we decided on, we also, like some other panelists said, we had the hopes of coming back to campus, especially to do our performances and have our graduation. So we pulled that plug pretty quickly after we pulled it out, put it out, but we were then left in this like unknown space where we didn't have a move out date. We didn't know when the semester was going to end. We still had summer conferences on the line. So we at some point wanted to, clear our building to have that opportunity if we could. And also the state was asking us if we could be a hospital or how we could reutilize our building. So, our building was just filled with people's belongings and we didn't really know what to do. At the same time, refunds were trending. Every student was like, this institution's giving a refund. This institution's giving a refund. And we felt a lot of pressure with trying to give some kind of refund to our students to do right by them, but also have some kind of benefit in doing so. So we developed what's been tagged as an incentivized move out, where we offered a 25% annual refund. So half of the semester rate plus the meal plan balance if students moved out within a week's time, basically. We also added an additional 10% if the student chose to have the refund turn into a credit. We would hope that would help with our melt a little bit and also keep the money in our hands a little bit, even though it was, moved onto their accounts. So the key essential piece in this was having our partnership with dorm room movers. Chelsea and I have become best friends over the past 2 months. And really, that was because asking somebody to come back to campus, especially in New York City, seemed really daunting and a little bit unfair, even though college move-outs was allowed. We wanted to have options for students, right? So everyone wants the refund. So we said, okay, you can come yourself, or you can use dorm room movers, or you can have a proxy. It helped us have, it helped options for our students and helped us feel like we were doing right by them. And I really recommend pairing the cost of your refund, the refund with the cost of storage, because that way it felt like there was an offset, right? So they were going to get something back, but they were using that money that they were getting back towards storage, which helped us in the long run. So I would say that was our really beneficial, and it cleared our building out 70%. We'll be up to 90% clear by the end of, by the weekend, so.
It's great. Thank you, Samantha. And, we really appreciate partners like you and, the experiences that come from these relationships. So many unique cases, and we did some special stuff as you're a, performing arts school. So we had also, there were students that lived in the city that needed keyboards, right? So when that came up, we figured out a plan to get those keyboards disseminated around Manhattan. And, that's the beauty of right now. I think that really everyone, mankind in general, at least most of mankind, really come together to help in unique and exciting ways. So great. And so next up here, we have Amanda from Union talking about offsetting costs and providing support where it matters the most. Take it away,
Yeah,
Amanda.
absolutely. Thanks, Matt. You can see our timeline up here since folks have covered a lot of what has been going on. I think we were all enduring some similar changing tides very rapidly. we would put together communications and then have to put together another communication before that communication had even hit the press, and then we had another communication right behind that. So things changed a lot between March 12th, which was our first confirmed case on campus in a staff member, and March 22nd, which is when all of our students had to be out by. And that was when New York State had also declared the statewide stay-at-home New York on pause order. Since that point, March 22nd, we've been down to our 56 students on campus, and those students have been staying with us and have their stuff still on campus. We have an additional approximately 500 or so students who have belongings that they left in place because they were unable to take them with them on short notice when they moved out. We've essentially been on pause since March 22nd and haven't really done much. I have been in communication with dorm removers and some other partners trying to come up with some tentative plans, awaiting a green light for us to be able to have folks come to campus. We have a very limited number of staff because we furloughed about 30% of our workforce. So in order to bring a vendor or any students or anyone to campus, we need to have staff to allow them access and make sure that they're being safe. And so we're just starting our checkout process next week. We actually just sent communication out today, and students can either come get their belongings or they can contract with dorm removers to either have their belongings stored or shipped to them. Our biggest concern is trying to strategize how to offset costs. We have a large number of students who come from very affluent backgrounds at our institution, but we also have a number of students who have very high financial need. And so a service like dorm removers or any third-party service for packing and shipping is sometimes an expense that students can't take on. So we do have a student persistence fund that we are allowing students to apply for funds through. And Matt and I, when we had our conversation, we're debating whether we were going to do an offset for all students or devote those funds to the students who really need them the most. And I think right now our plan is to see how many students we have sign up who seek funds through the persistence fund, and then reevaluate whether we can offer assistance to everybody who's signed up or not, depending on where our numbers end up. But our hope is that a little bit of financial assistance will go a long way in terms of breeding goodwill among our population.
Absolutely. It's also just so interesting, everyone on different timelines, where things landed in terms of the refunds versus that participation, and where the priorities are as a campus, where you're putting focus on creating that end of term experience for students, because there's so many areas where we could put that energy and look to make improvement for them. So thank you for sharing that, Amanda. It's terrific to have you on the panel here with that experience. So great. Moving out to Ohio now. John White, coordinating student return schedules, maintaining social distancing, a topic that I'm sure everyone's handling pretty much right now. So when you take us through that on your campus, John.
Thanks, Drew. To kind of give some people some background, our students were told right on the beginning of spring break that we would delay. They got a 2-week extension on spring break till April 6th. And then all of a sudden, 2 days later, they were told that we were going to go to a virtual class. And then they were told that classes would be virtual for the rest of the semester, and that they needed to come and move out. And so on March 22nd, residence halls would close. So students started coming back and moving out. A good number moved out. But then we had students who had to apply to move out, apply to stay. They wanted to keep numbers down low. So we had about 424 that were allowed to stay. And then we had about 725 or so that could not move out, could not come back, and they left their belongings here. And so we considered those and we marked those as deferred checkouts. So then the governor put in a stay and shelter order for the state of Ohio. And so nothing could then happen. There were talk that he would release that stay in shelter about May 1st, which he did. So then we started communicating with students to come and pick up their belongings, and students could then move out. So right around the 1st of May, we started communicating with students who were here about moving out. We had to get our plan to move out approved with the county, and we had to have virtual distancing or social distancing and move out, which meant that we had to have only a few people in a residence hall at one time. Roommates could not move out at the same time. Only one person could be with that person, only 2 people in an elevator, and so forth. So we sent out those rules, and we had those that were here move out first. They moved out by last Saturday. Those that had belongings here could do one of several processes. They could schedule to come back. They had a 6-hour time frame. They could only have one person with them. They had to wear masks. They had to use hand sanitizers. And then we had hand sanitizer stations stationed throughout all the residence halls, in front of elevators, 2 people to an elevator, and so forth. And then they could have, they could arrange with dorm removers to come and pack up their belongings, and then we would work with them to schedule a time to come and pick up their belongings, or or they could have a proxy. They could designate somebody, a family member, a boyfriend or girlfriend or somebody, to come and get their stuff as well. Some of the things that we did not really realize when we were making that is some people live in other states, live in other countries. Some of the students were in shelter in place in their other states. And so we had them originally scheduled for May 24th to get this accomplished. But when they were in other states, they're still in shelter to the end of May. So we ended up having to extend this to June 7th and make other accommodations for them and so forth. And so we've learned through this process and we've had to make several accommodations because of that. So I would say to those who haven't gone down this is to think about where your students are and what accommodations you may have to make in your process as you do this.
It's so challenging when, I mean, most campuses have 3-4 different potential scenarios that students might be in, whether it's, international or just far from campus. Maybe there's an active case in their family or, possibly even themselves. So, that messaging is so critical. And how do you get all this in one message and ensure it's even read? Because we all know that, anything over 3 sentences, you're probably going to start running into some pushback, right? So, thank you for that share. If anyone wants to speak with John, I'm sure he'd be happy to help talk through what their scheduling process and that, that time block coordination is looking like. So
exactly.
And our last panelist, but not least, Jeff from Montana State's talking about school facilitated shipping and on-campus storage. A lot of this has been done. There was some essential item programs. So, done by your auxiliary staff and your maintenance staff, right, Jeff? So we'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, Matt, I think was hoping we'd run out of time before I got to go because I no, very similar timelines to what you've all described. Students were away at spring break. We decided to go online, trying to carefully message, but we don't know what the future brings. Let's not rule out the possibility. So we were strongly encouraging them not to come back. And as many of you may have experienced, it was our RAs and desk clerks and resident directors that were trying to guard the gates of students coming back. I would say that as a university, our approach was pretty conservative and strong in terms of not allowing any exceptions for that. And so as of now, we have about 1,000-ish rooms with items in them. We had a kind of a staggered trout. We had a stay-at-home order for our Montana students. Half of our student body is in-state, half is out-of-state. And when the governor's travel restrictions went in place in March, we weren't allowing anybody to come back into the residence halls to get their items. And other schools, in the state were allowing that. And so I think we had to, we were learning to work together to try to find an approach that worked for everybody. But again, we have this backlog of items. We opened it up to Montana students a couple of weeks ago. We've had about, I think, 700 students come in that same coordinated, safe, scheduled way, get into our buildings to retrieve their items. When we approached Matt and dorm room movers, we've looked at them as an option for both move-in day and move out as we're trying to learn how to efficiently, make all of these processes work, avoid lines and promote student satisfaction and so forth. And so when this all hit, we thought, well, let's take a closer look at how we might be able to partner. When some of my teammates were working with Matt, he says, you know what, because you have staff members that are going in and boxing up essential items, you have staff members that would be willing to go in and box the larger items either for storage or shipping at no cost. Maybe that's the right path for you. So it's been a good conversation, and I've learned a lot about how we might be able to approach some of these challenges in the future. We did ship essential items. I saw a question in the queue about liability and have you had students file claims or frustrations due to us shipping the wrong items, or we've had two. We sent some medication to the wrong person of all things, and we had a computer that broke. And so we did have insurance through our shipping partner, and we're working with our university's insurance as well. But so far, people have been operating really in good faith, and I think one of the things that has really made this work is a lot of phone calls, not a lot of, if we can call versus email and talk through the frustrations if we need to and take another shot at it, that's been very effective. And we let all those, I take a lot of those calls. One of our senior members of the team, we want to make sure that we've centralized that communication, express our understanding, and try to come up with a solution that works. Matt asked if I would talk a little bit about how we have staffed this, and our senior associate, and I'll just give him some credit, Chancey Ringer, really took some time away from his normal responsibilities to coordinate all of this. And so he had people reporting to him from the administrative operations side, RDs, RAs, desk clerks, and just everything would funnel through him so we didn't miscommunicate. There were so many moving parts. He's also, the crew that's going in and boxing up our essential items is our custodial crew. We waited, 2 weeks before we got in. We made sure that we were looking at our rosters. With our summer crew, with culinary services being offline, we did decide not to house conference guests. We have a very small summer operation, so we're not operating a full dining. We've moved a lot of our food service employees into that summer labor crew. And so we were very fortunate to do that, to not have to furlough and lay people off. With this new announcement that we're going to start up early, that means our early arriving groups are coming in early. We're going to lose half of our shipping and storage crew. At the same time, that group was going to quickly strip wax and get our rooms ready for the fall. And so we've got a shortened window to get these items, to allow students from out of state to come and collect their items. We are still restricting out of state travel, and I haven't heard any whispers that is going to be lifted. Montana is heavily, our economy is heavily driven by tourism, especially, Montana State and Bozeman being so close to the park. There's growing pressure to force some movement. We just haven't heard anything yet. If we don't have some news by June 1st, we may be in a scenario where we need either Matt's help or another company to come in and help us out. One of the reasons that Matt's service was attractive to us is I think some students are more comfortable with us going in, and I think some students would be more comfortable with a third party, an outside contractor coming in for whatever reasons they may be. But for sure, we're trying to avoid, if we can, having to pack all the items up without the students, really wanting us to do that. So kind of wait and see, watching moving timelines again, learn today about how much time we have to get these rooms emptied in time to open early. So similar challenges. Very thankful that we had a staff that was willing to go in, and we had a sanitarian working with them and training them, and just a really good community spirit to pull this together.
It's been amazing to watch your team. And, Jeff, you and I haven't personally worked a ton together. I've been working a lot with your associate director team. And, we had actually gone through an RFP process that was awarded like 2 weeks before all this hit. So, it was really cool to see just how well, and quick to act your team was ready to go. And that's why when I was, working with them, I was like, hey, let me give you some of my best practices, and we're here to support you, and we'll jump in if needed. But it sounds like you've really got things well covered. So, and on that note, I know we're running down a little close to the end of the time here. So if there are questions that we want to make sure that we get in, if they can't get answered here, I'm sure there's a mechanism for us to get you answers back or share them back with the community. And I'll just take a moment to kind of talk about what we're looking at right now. And, off of Jeff's great share, we're really focused on developing this emergency move-out playbook. This hit everyone it was so unforeseen, right? And how do we all as a community, individual campuses, how do we make sure this doesn't hit us again when and if it hits us again, right? So, and our timeline's been an interesting one, but landing where we are today, the big focus is on how are we handling these contactless move-ins, and then what are we doing to really prepare for these potential mid-semester move-outs, the emergency plan again. So some helpful topics from all, working with over 140 campus partners around the country in the last 8 weeks. We've been exposed to some incredible experiences, which is, where this whole webinar came from. So some take-home value just from our experience, have that debate and create your refund process and formula now. Anytime you can put a formula to a problem, it's gonna yield a consistent result, right? So that's some advice from what we've seen. Turning your email archives into ready-to-go templates. How much time was spent putting the final touches on all of these emails, from the notifications to even the reply templates for when students are emailing about the same questions, over and over. Get those ready to go in a doc, and be ready if needed. Inbound phone email support plan, having that prepared, scripting IVRs, is you've heard here today, one message goes out and it's a domino effect. So how do you get ahead of that? How do you make sure your team, are you utilizing any kind of third party contact center solutions, but having that prepared and ready to go so the burden isn't felt by your staff and then translated to the student experience, we see as very, very powerful. So outside of those concepts, really having this internal logistics plan or a partnered provider on hand, right? Having this playbook ready to go, having some variance built into there. Are students still on campus when this needs to happen? Can items be left behind if they're vacating quickly, and how would that look? So some kind of focus areas there. Contracts and staffing plans last minute are never fun, right? So whether you're putting that internal plan together, you're finding primary partner to bring in and create that strategy up front. This will really make it a lot easier for everyone to execute. And also, identifying, if possible, one partner that can get the work done well and proper and timely for you. We've found, as we've activated around the country, on campuses where there's a really clear path to either an internal plan or a third-party process, there's a lot less confusion for students, faculty, and decision-making. So that's a recommendation that I've always shared with partners. Boxes and tape, having access. Students need to pack up in under 1 day, 2 days, get off campus. How are they going to get their belongings packed? You know, working with your campus partners to have some kind of supply kit, boxes and tape readily available or provided at check-in to be stored under their bed in case this comes to a head again. Your security, your proxy access protocol, PPE requirements for third parties or staff, get it in the handbook, get it in the playbook. Labels and identification tags for students that are leaving items behind. You know, if you've got one day to pack up and go, it's going to be super difficult to bring some things home with you on the plane or in the car. So when the school is coming back around, either administer that essential shipping or self-storage, or you're bringing in a primary third party to do that, having some kind of labeling system to identify what items should be stored, what should be shipped, what are items to discard, and what items belong to which student. If they can do that in preparation of them vacating campus, it'll make that whole process a lot easier for folks. Some other things, recorded video call procedure, scheduling process. You're looking at some of the questions that have come in. This was paramount for us. How do we ensure we have this continuity in the liability transfer from student vacating room, campus staff or our staff entering the room, those items being brought back potentially to the room even before students come back in the fall. So we found recorded video calls, having them present, having the documentation, or at the very least a recorded video or some images that are saved in a server, super impactful. What's your shipping and storage plan? Is it going to be on-site, off-site? Who's paying for it, right? So in Amanda's case, like, walking away with these takeaways from this experience, that can get published in that playbook, and this never needs to be debated again if we're ever in a pandemic or some kind of crisis where housing needs to shut down overnight. Lastly, that the return to pack checkout scheduling process, everyone spent a ton of time identifying just how to go about doing this. Let's not lose that as we come back to hopefully some normalcy in August. And then, lastly, these special programs, on-campus student item relocation, hall consolidations. A lot of campuses were doing this for, to provide medical buildings for their community. What's the playbook? How do you get this executed seamlessly and overnight? Amongst many other things. So just some feedback from us. We've had the pleasure of working with so many incredible campuses and partners, and we're truly humbled to have been given the opportunity to show up for our community during this tough time. So, we'll be working diligently in the next few months with all of our partners to make that move-in plan and really hone in that custom emergency playbook for each of our partners' campuses. So with that, are any new questions coming in here? Looks like we have one. Operation Manager UC Davis, Student Housing Dining Services. We shut our phones off at the end of March for outgoing messages. I thought about doing the same. We have a group of 12 of us who filter through flag emails for appropriate staff members who can then access and respond. If we feel the email needs a phone call, we make that call. So far, it's worked well, not only for students moving out, but now for housing applications as well. So that's some great feedback. Thank you for sharing that with everyone. Give that a thumbs up.
I will just chime in that we filtered most of the phone conversations to our live-in residential life staff at UW with centralized talking points that they had, but similarly put a team together that was monitoring the email inbox and tried to get messages out in a nice flow. So that has worked well for us also and has been efficient.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing. We're directing everyone to call us by phone. We're not allowing any drop-in traffic, and we're trying to handle everything by email or phone or by appointment only, so that we don't have too many students coming in at one time, so that we can maintain social distancing. We have a small office, and so we can't have too many students show up at one time.
That's
Awesome. And as I know we're getting close to wrapping up, thank you so much to our panelists and to Matt for really helping to put this together and really respond to kind of that area on our latest straw poll. The parting thought I'd like each of our panelists to really have a chance to share, if you could just take with us a lesson, one of those key lessons you learned from this, or perhaps something that you've learned that you would incorporate into a potential move-in as we look at what move-in might look like in the fall, some way, shape, or form. We know at some point, darn it, students are moving back to campus. And when that finally does, what processes may have changed and things you may have learned from this process that you'll move forward into that move back to campus. So if we could just have each panelist, take their opportunity to share that as kind of a parting thought as we start to close today.
I guess one of the things as we start to put some form to our semester, I think we need to be very transparent with our students and how different it's going to be. And part of that message is bring fewer items and, working with local businesses here to provide student discounts, potentially have items delivered to them here if they should need them once they arrive, but really to think about minimalizing all of the items that you bring.
I think the takeaway for me as I'm looking forward to move in is thinking about the ease of process and creating a system. Matt and I talked briefly about this when we had a call, was pre-arrival delivery of belongings to students and not handling move in the way we normally do, and that we wouldn't allow students to roll up with their carload of stuff, and we'd have a bunch of orientation advisors and RAs unloading their cars and carrying everything into their room for them, but rather they'd have to have everything shipped to a third party potentially or somewhere else and have that stuff all placed in their room for them before they arrive, so that we minimize touch points and all of that. We're also looking at things like providing micro fridges in everyone's room so that that's one less thing that they have to bring with them, as Jeff was saying, to minimize what they're packing and bringing.
I'm going to say patience and trust in colleagues and others. I think that going into move-in, it's not going to be the same. There's going to be social distancing in other aspects. It's going to take more days than it has in the past. At least that's what I can say for sure on our end. And so we just kind of need to step back and be okay with that, and be patient and easy to communicate with the parents and the students coming in, and know that it's a stressful time for them and it's going to be a difficult period for a while. So that I've learned we're very capable of throughout this process, and is definitely going to translate to our move-in process.
I would have to really agree with everything that everybody says. Move-in is not going to be like what we've seen in the past. It is going to be much longer because we're going to have to provide for social distancing. We're going to have to encourage students to send their belongings through a third party, to have it delivered to their room and have it there prior to their arrival. They cannot bring all their family members to help them bring some stuff that they don't want to ship. It'll be one person. Move-in will occur over a week's time or 2 weeks' time, depending upon the size of the university. It won't have the excitement that it used to have, and have the welcoming by all the staff and such. And so it is going to be very much different in the fall. Students won't have the open spaces and the excitement and in the residence halls, which we are being told they can't have. And so it's going to be a very different experience for them.
Yeah, echo a lot of what you all are saying, but I guess to be more of a generalist, I would say it's not going to be perfect. No matter what you plan, no matter how hard you try to control. I feel like over the past 2 months, I've just like thrown best practices out the window. And it's taken a while for me to cope with that. And I think that the more that you just say like, okay, we're going to get like 99%, we're going to get like as good as we possibly can, along with a healthy dose of transparency, so that, you know, you're keeping those relationships authentic, but also realizing that like there's always going to be the one that like ruins your plan. That's my best advice for you as you move forward.
And I think I would just, whatever everyone else has said has been great. And I want to just thinking about fall, one thing in this process that we've tried to keep at the front of our mind, and at times, honestly, we've not always done the best job at. Amanda pointed this out earlier. Our students are coming from a lot of different places, and this situation has impacted them inequitably. So thinking about move-in two, all the things we plan, we need to think about how that move-in process change will also impact our students inequitably. So while it is difficult to do, and Samantha correctly, it won't be perfect, we need to do our best to consider all the different experiences and identities that our residents will bring, and how a modified move-in is going to look different, and it's going to impact people in different ways.
That's so true, right? It's going to be a different move-in to Chapman if you're coming from Singapore versus Northern California, and you know how your items are transported and then moved in. So I can certainly join you, Samantha, in this feeling of difficulty coping with anything that's not perfect, because I too am a bit of an OCD perfectionist with process, and we've had to do a lot of process shifts and creating a new process as we go. So I think that's one of the great things, and that where our focus right now is in taking advantage of this time that we now have to plan. So none of us had this luxury of a couple of months to get ready to hone messaging and make sure it's clear and concise. So that's a huge opportunity for the entire community now to really pin down what your plan is going to be and clear that messaging. And, you know, for us, we're looking at all the things discussed, the contactless move-in opportunities, but really also just how to prepare for if this happens again, you know, getting those supply kits on hand for students when we're delivering their items in the fall, or if we're doing a contactless ship to school delivery or curbside move in, getting those supply kits under their bed so they are ready to make moves, providing a labeling and sticker process to help identify their pre-packed items, and if they need to be shipped, stored, just everything that we went through, never want to go through it again. Spencer, I'll pass it back to you.
Certainly, thank you. And I thank both you and all of our panelists for joining us this afternoon. A couple quick updates as we part ways this afternoon. We have a number of virtual roundtables already set up for next week, so please visit the ACUHO page to start to see those forming. Full slate. So housing facility services on Monday. We have a partnership with the Association for Student Conduct Administration on Tuesday, and a return to campus liability and student conduct implications. On Thursday, we have a session at 3 a.m. Eastern. Can't wait. That's going to be an awesome one with the Global Initiatives Network, really connecting our non-U.S. members together and helping them share and connect during this time as well. And then on Thursday, we are partnering with the Society for Human Resource Management on a virtual roundtable that will certainly help many of our members shape what the work they're doing with their employees and how we're working through COVID-19 and budgetary restraints. Certainly a big thank you to everyone. I know not only do I want to thank you for joining us, but if there have been topics today that have spurred your interest in working with Matt or connecting with anyone else on this group, certainly I know you've got a link there underneath your title that if people want to reach out and connect, that's a way to get on your calendar and set up an appointment. So with that, those are my final words. I really thank all of our panelists and all of our attendees for today's interest. We will be recording this and sending out a message to all attendees with the recording as well. Thanks so much, everyone.
Spencer, thank you, and ACUHO. I'll speak on behalf of everybody that's still here. Without the ACUHO organization, there would be so many lost and trying to scramble to figure things out. And the work that you're all doing right now to bring all this information together, it is absolutely invaluable for everybody. So thank you.
We do it together. Can't do it without members. So we're all in this together, truly.
That's the truth, isn't it?
All right, I bid you all farewell. Have wonderful weekends and hope to see you online again soon at another virtual roundtable. Bye, everyone.